Welcome back to the Running on Grass podcast. As always, I am your host, Logan Pribino, here with my co-host, Eamon O'Toole. How we doing on this wonderful, beautiful Tuesday, Eamon?
It's another beautiful morning here in South Central Wyoming, Logan. How are things in Nebraska?
Real good. We need about 2 inches of rain, but things are looking good. It's a beautiful day.
Yeah, I talked to a guy in Torrington yesterday, and he said, uh, if you could bring 5 inches of rain, we would be much appreciated. I said, I'm so short on rain, it would be hard for me to let that go by.
Yeah, I went and looked at our oat pea mix, and it is headed out. It has not been grazed, and it's probably 7 inches and thin and headed out. In a normal year, you can throw your hat down and the biomass will catch it probably 12 to 16 inches off the ground. And if you throw your hat off now in it, it touches dirt.
Is Well, I
So,
remember last summer when I was out there and you had 28 inches of rain or some crazy
yeah.
thing over the summer. And you're like, I remember several years ago, you could throw a golf ball out there and you could watch it roll and never lose sight of it. Last year, you're like, if you threw it out there, it'd be a goner.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You could throw a golf ball into this oat pea mix and you could go find it. But yeah, you saw it last year when it was like you you could throw a bowling ball out there. You're not gonna find it.
Yeah, that was wild. Well, we're getting on the forest. Yesterday, we got our replacement heifers or our breeding heifers that we're going to sell this fall. We got them on the national forest yesterday. And we're putting our pairs on the forest today and tomorrow. So pretty excited here to start getting into the really good grass and kind of higher up country. So that'll be good.
Exciting. Well, let's give these guys a preview of what we want to hit on today. What's first up and then on forth.
We've got a bunch of good stuff today. We're going to talk about next generation ranchers, autonomy versus systems, and keep hitting on some stuff. We had a lot of folks that were really interested in when we talked about the employees and retention and how we manage that. And that really struck a chord with people. I think that's a lot of ranches' big issue is employee retention. So we're going to visit about that. And then we'll talk about ATVs versus horses. And we mentioned it before. We use both here in my place, but your place is ATV only. And
Yeah, and I've
so
got a nice spreadsheet of cost of ownership of ATV side by side and ranch horses.
I'd love to see that, but I don't want to even look at it.
I didn't share it with you on purpose. I've only got it on my screen.
Well,
And
we'll
then
we'll let everybody know what that looks like too. So, and then we've got some good stuff here at the end that we want to talk about next time. So I think we've got a pretty good show lined up for today, and let's go ahead and kick it off.
all right, let's give a shout out to Eastco. They're the sponsors for this episode. The annual forage deadline is July 15th. So keep that in mind. Eastco is a rancher-owned agency that helps producers manage risk through products like PRF annual forage for weather protection, along with LRP for livestock price coverage. And for context, this is kind of a important note here. PRF has paid out over 9.7 billion in indemnity, and they have collected 4.6 billion in premiums. So do the math on that one. You really need to be signed up for PRF if you're not. And with the annual forage deadline coming up on July 15th, now is a good time to look at your options. To learn more, visit eastcogroup.com or email info@eastcogroup.com.
Great, those guys are really good. Everybody should look them up, and we'd love to hear how people like their PRF too. That'd be a good episode to talk about and hear what people are thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, we should hit on that maybe next time. But some listener feedback that we had based on last episode where we really hit a lot about employee management and SOPs. Luke Perman reached out. He said he listened to it 3 times over, which if Luke Perman listened to it 3 times, that's quality content. I know that guy, very sharp. Rock Hills Rancher on Twitter out of South Dakota. And he really wanted to talk more about SOP management, what worked, what didn't work. Noah Schenkel, Shamrock Ranch, has also reached out. He is on the Shamrock Ranches, which is highly subdivided into like 80 or 90 acre pastures. And he had some frustrations just trying to get that system understood and was wondering what SOPs would look like on his operation. So both those guys kind of reached out and had some follow-up questions for me. So we're really going to talk a little bit more about SOPs, autonomy, and kind of tying it in with bringing in the next generation.
Tell everybody one more time, what are SOPs, Logan?
SOPs are standard operating procedures. So when you work at McDonald's, there's a sheet that tells you how to fry a hamburger, and you just follow the checklist, and that's why you can show up at any McDonald's in America, and it is the same because it's standard operating procedures where you follow a checklist.
Yeah, well, I've already had conversations with our leadership team this morning. I didn't make it up to breakfast so I could get this done, but I talked to my sister, who's obviously a co-owner and manager with me, and then Chandler. We visited this morning about what we want to do on today's plans. So hopefully, the end of the table at the breakfast table isn't going to be totally lost this morning. I'm sure Ren's sitting in there. Uh,
Did he make it out there?
but yeah, Ren and McCoy drove up this morning. They're at breakfast.
Okay. What are they doing today?
Uh, McCoy is gonna go help. We're gonna take a cow camp up today, or Chandler is, and he's gonna have McCoy help him get the cow camp set up for one of our interns who's comes from a ranch in Montana. He's very capable and a little different scenario than a lot of my University of Wyoming interns there. This young man has already graduated college, grew up on a family ranch. He's pretty competent. So he's going to live in a camp and watch a group of cows, and then I'll have another guy that is going to live in another camp for me. So they're going to get their camps hauled up today since we're turning out this later this afternoon, and then tomorrow on those forest permits. So they're going to get their camps hauled up and get set up so they can start watching pairs.
And they'll just stay up there all week,
They'll stay up there all summer.
all summer. Gotcha.
Yep, well, they'll come back, on weekends or whatever and grab a shower and kinda do their laundry and things like that, but for the most part, they're gonna live up there with those cows all the time. And we also just throw this out there, you and I haven't visited about this. I got a call yesterday from one of my landlords in that has a private inholding in the forest, and they've seen a wolf with a collar on it. This is about 20 miles north of Steamboat Springs, and not very far the way the crow flies from the wolf that Colorado Parks and Wildlife just put down. So, so we're kind of on wolf watch also.
And you can control them as long as they're in Wyoming, even if they have a collar?
If they come into Wyoming, then they're fair game.
Fair game. Gotcha.
Yep. But if they in Colorado, there's a really interesting article, and maybe we can talk about it another time. But there is a lady whose hired hand shot a wolf with a collar on that had killed a bunch of their livestock, and now they're trying to figure out how to manage that because CPW didn't take care of it, and so the state of Colorado didn't do anything, and they kept losing more animals. Well, the state of Colorado now is going to have to buy, as I understand their laws, has to pay for all those dead animals. And if they would have just taken care of the wolf in the first place, it would have saved the taxpayers of Colorado a lot of money. So,
Yeah. I've heard that the wolf issue in Colorado is dead in the water. Even the environmentalists are it's just not a thing. It did not work as expected.
no, and it really only passed by not even a full percentage point when it went to the ballot several years ago. So it didn't take um, a lot of convincing to get the thing flipped over to be a majority of people that are like, "The wolf thing was a dumb idea. We
Yeah.
shouldn't have done that." And they said it costs 500,000 a year, which for a state government isn't that much money. It's costing them over 5,000,000 a year
Wow.
to manage these wolves and bring them in and do all the different pieces of it. So it's really been a disaster for them. And we're kind of getting a little bit off topic, but it kind of goes back to employees. And, I've got guys living in camps to manage my livestock and make sure that we don't have wolves in them and make sure that bulls are with cows. And we do have collars on them. So we're going to be able to try and make sure that those cows, when they're in heat, can be with bulls.
So do you send them up with a checklist that says what to do if you encounter a wolf?
It is absolutely do not shoot it if you're in Colorado. That is what the checklist video, watch, make sure have every piece of documentation you can so that the state of Colorado can pay me back. That's basically the checklist. So, Anyways, let's tell us a little bit more about Luke and Noah and what they've got going on, and then we'll get into it.
Well, Luke really kind of wanted us to hit on, what failed with the SOP checklist, and um, you know, speaking of bringing on the next generation, the younger your employees are, the more supervision they need, the more SOPs they're reliant on. But as your employees stay with you, the less that they really need. And if I were to try to get TJ or Braden, who have both been with me for 6 and 7 years, if I were to try to hand them an SOP about moving pairs or something like that, um, it wouldn't be good. They wouldn't get any value out of it because there's the SOPs and then there's autonomy. And I really like to give my good guys a lot of autonomy, and having them manage a business using SOPs is moving away from autonomy. Whereas I really like for them to be able to think that they are the ones managing the ranch because they are. And like, for example, when I show up on the main ranch, Braden is in charge and I am working for Braden essentially. So I really have moved away from the SOPs and given my long-term guys a lot more autonomy.
Yeah, I've been texting with Braden this morning already. They're loading out the last bit of my cows that are on your ranch.
Yeah, we're shipping your pairs right now. You got me out of loading pairs. So thanks, Amy.
Yeah, I texted him like, "Hey, what time are trucks gonna be here?" And he said, "We're bumping up to the chute right now for the first truck." And I said, "Perfect." So, um, that's how good I would say your guys are, is that one, you can be doing this and they can be loading pairs, which isn't a complicated or hard thing to do. But I'm Braden's great, and he'll call me if he has a question or has a concern, and I love that. So, I think having autonomy in your guys. But at what year do you think you can start giving autonomy, or does that maybe it's not even a year, maybe it's 6 months, or you just that slowly builds up? What do you think?
That's a really good question. So just going to use real world examples. TJ grew up on a ranch. He has a ranch in Chase County that is his mom's place. It's not quite big enough for him and his mom, which is why he's working out at the wine glass. But he's the cow boss. He really had it kind of figured out before he showed up at wine glass, and so I really didn't need he didn't not need a lot from me. Uh, we put him in that cow boss role right away, and he excelled. He did not need a lot of training, a lot of SOP management or guardrails. Braden came to me. Uh, he was going to be an NRCS range con dude and did that for 2 weeks, and then came to me and he's like, I can't do that. I need to work here." Basically,
Need to be
uh,
outside.
he, ne- yeah, yeah, he needed a little bit more training. He grew up in Hastings, Colorado, attended Chadron State, and um, you know, my main teaching method for Braden was letting him fail. When he was the stalker manager before he really should have been the stalker manager, and he learned not from me. He really learned from trial and error. And my dad would say that that's really the only way to learn. Unless it hurts you, um, you're not gonna learn from the lesson. How about you, Eamon?
Well, to follow that up quickly, my mom says every lesson she's learned from an animal, she learned from a dead one.
Yeah,
So, that's luckily, our business is very forgiving like that and just tells us, "Here's a dead one, you better figure out what happened here, or else you'll have another one."
yeah,
So, Um, I would say I'll talk about me first because I came back here as a kid who grew up on this ranch and worked it like any other employee, just like I send my kids to work every day to go work with my guys. So, I'll preface it with that, and then I came home and my parents were still very much actively running the ranch, and I was, at the bottom of the totem pole and wrangled in the morning and went and move cows every day or went and docked or whatever we were doing that day, go move sheep camp, whatever was the most important thing that needed done. And then um, my dad was in a bad four-wheeler wreck and he uh, all of a sudden the ranch was mine and my sister's, and they were like, "Okay, now you're in charge," 'cause, they had to be in Denver the rest of the summer, both of them. So we went from being kind of the grunts to running our operation in an extremely droughty year, and we hadn't sold a lamb or a calf yet, and Megan, my sister, and I had to figure that out. So I would say it was trial by fire mostly for me, but I had already technically worked here on the ranch, my entire life. So I already had 20 some years of job training technically. Um, for my different guys, we've had several different managers over the years. My parents always had kind of a top guy. They were running things definitely, but they always had a guy that they just, if they needed to be gone somewhere, they didn't worry about day-to-day things happening. They made sure all those guys got things done. And Chandler has become that for more my generation. My parents' guys retired in the last few years, which was very sad, and we sure miss them. But it was really lucky that Chandler was working for me at the time that those guys were in their last years, and I think they taught him a lot, whether I knew it or not. I didn't ever even think about them kind of training Chandler up. He started for me as a 6-month guy. I just needed a guy to help for the summer, and then, one thing led to another and, "Hey, Chandler, can you help through the winter? Hey," and then pretty soon here we are, 5 years next month.
Okay. I
So
kinda had a similar start to management, whereas my dad was the de facto manager when I came back, of course, and then he and my mom like to take off a lot of time in the winter. They'd take a month, typically the month of March, and March is when we're moving from corn stalks back to the ranch, and so we're on other people's ground, and, he was gone for 30 days, and he would just tell people, it's like, "Logan's gonna handle this, like, you can figure it out," and it was also kind of a trial by fire, and I wrote this down in a journal. I think it was 2015 or 2016 in the spring at a really critical time for us, and I wrote that was the day that I showed up to manage the Wineglass Ranch, is when my dad was gone for 30 days, and, that was a marked milestone in my life where I was like, "Okay, I am really the manager here," about 10 years ago.
yeah, I would say I had that feeling. I never wrote it down, and I should have. You're so good about, putting stuff on your in your journal, and that's really awesome. I think a lot of more people should do that, and it would be nice to go back and look at my grandfather, father, people before me, and see the different challenges they had and what they did about them, or have those stories to understand the operation a little better, I think, and your girls will have that. So that's a really cool thing you've got going on there. Um, I would say my guys, having worked with my guys and having done those long days with them as a coworker, not as their boss, really helped me become a leader in our operation because my guys knew that I had done everything they had done. So I've never asked one guy to do a job that I haven't done.
Yeah, and I think that's very true in all of ag and ranching. You have to be there, boots on the ground, uh, to earn their respect, and you have to have been in their shoes at least at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I wouldn't say that we even do SOPs for our interns the way that we probably should, but we do go out and spend time on the ground with them when we do grass samplings. We did that together with the University of Wyoming folks to show them what we want to measure our grass in our meadows and things like that before they ever got there, or before we turned them loose. And then my other employees who are a lot of H2A guys, they learn, I would say, from my longer term guys. I've got several H2A guys in us for 20 plus years. And so I tell them what job I want. And then, I expect that those older guys are going to go kind of hold their hand a little bit in the day to day and show them, hey, this is how he wants water moved or where he wants water moved, or, uh, this is how we herd sheep. And they start out in lambing camp together is a lot of times because you'll get new guys in the spring, and then they'll be here for shearing, and then they'll maybe do have done a little bit of shed lambing, and then they go into lambing on the range, and so they're working with the older guys, and the older guys are teaching the younger guys at the same time, and so a lot of that is happening in a natural way. I've just never really thought about it, but those younger guys are definitely being the tutelage from the older guys is very important in our operation.
So are any of these written down anywhere, or is it just word of mouth training?
Um, on my operation, it is not written down. I don't even know how. I guess I could write it down and then we'd have to translate it to Spanish and, you know, but it's here's the tricky thing about Spanish, and I would say it's even worse than the United States where you have people from Louisiana that have a little bit different dialect maybe than we do. Um, it's it's almost like they're different languages that are the same language. My guys from Mexico do not speak the same kind of Spanish as my guys from Peru, and they have different words for things. And so, in some of those regards, it would be pretty challenging to have one Spanish manual that kind of went across for everybody. And then we've had guys come up here that didn't even speak Spanish. They spoke Quechua, which is the old Incan language, because they come from the high mountains of the Andes and they've never even been to Lima.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting to kind of learn these other things. And those guys from that speak Quechua end up learning Spanish while they're here.
Sure. So training at the ladder ranch is 100% passed on tradition, word of mouth training.
Yeah, I would say absolutely. We're not systems managed the way that the wine glass is.
Yeah, and so we have an SOP manual in the office, and I'll tell you, I created it, and the biggest value I got from creating it is creating it. I think when I eventually hire a manager to replace me as I kind of move into my dad's role, I'm gonna burn the SOP manual that I made and tell the manager, it's like, we don't have an SOP manual. I need you to make one. And I think that that will be a lot of value for that manager. But so Zane would be my junior employee. I'm trying to think the number of times that he pulls out that manual. It is very infrequent, if at all. Now, the farm side, like the equipment management, we have an SOP manual for that. I use that quite a bit. I know Joanne does. So it's a little bit more used on the farm side. But yeah, the ranch SOP manual, I don't think, it's collecting dust basically. But again, my most junior employee, Zane, been with us for like 5 years. So we're just in a little bit different position.
Yeah, and where livestock are so much less, in air quotes, mechanical, and when you get in a piece of equipment, it's gonna run the same time every time,
Mhm. Yeah.
and the field is gonna be the same way it was last time, and, it's very everything's very much expected the way it's gonna be.
Mhm.
Where, like, going out and gathering livestock, we're trying to do this really cool, intensive grazing thing with your yearlings. Well, our heifers, some guy running through the national forest decided to open one of our gates, and I ended up with 300 head in my meadows that they gathered yesterday that were not there the day before. So, and it kinda screwed up some of our grazing stuff, but it doesn't Chandler made me feel good about it. I don't know if it's if it's what it looks like because I haven't been there yet because I didn't get home till dark last night, but he, uh, he's like, "No, I didn't really screw anything up. I think it'll be fine." So that's what I'm going off of right now, and I can sleep at night knowing that, I guess.
So you're
So
saying when livestock productions, every day is a surprise, basically.
yeah. Yeah, you just don't know what you're going out to for sure, and when you get there, is there gonna be the death loss or these kind of things, which I guess you can kinda see a little bit on the farming side as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, that is very true.
Yeah. Well, tell me, do you guys do anything in terms of, uh, corral work or things like that that you do with systems, or are you teaching your guys where they need to be, how they need to be? Is that written somewhere? Or
Yeah, how we build fence is in the SOP manual. Tino builds all of our fence. He's been here longer than I have. He's been here 15, 16 years. So again, it's written down, but he not like he goes and looks at it. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned that in a previous podcast about my guys that do fence work, is the first year I had to really hold their hand and show them where that fence even was. They didn't know. And now I just say, "Hey, can you guys go up and get all this fence up?" And they're like, "Yep." And they're gone, and you don't even worry about it. So I think there's a lot of value in the time and finding those guys though. I kind of have this rule that we joke about here is you got to go through uh gosh, at maybe 10 guys, 7 to 10 guys before you find one that's going to be really good.
That's
Rarely,
interesting.
rarely do you find the really good one the first guy out.
Interesting. Tell me more about that.
Well, part of it is you as when you're hiring your first guys, you don't even know what you're looking for. You're just kind of throwing a web out there and hoping you catch something that's good. And after you one, maybe you've had that good guy in those first 7 to 10, but you didn't know it because you weren't ready for him.
Mhm.
And
I
maybe
agree with that.
maybe that's part of the issue is the guy hiring. But I think that the bigger issue is that a lot of the guys you go through, you figure out what you want. So you're gonna go ahead and pass on some other guys along the way. Okay, this guy seems better than that guy. These 2 guys seem this guy seems better than the last 2 or 3 guys. And then by the time you get to 7 to 10 guys, you've gotten to the guy that you're looking for.
Yep, and that person is seeking you. I get that. I'm in a position right now where we're sitting pretty, and it's because of the team, if that makes sense. Not because of me and the management. It's they see what's happening amongst the staff, and they want to be a part of it. And it's not because of my pristine management skills. It's really the reputation of the team that I have, which is has really changed in the last, 7 years or so. But yeah,
Yeah.
what you said was good guys seeking good teams and vice versa, and it takes a little while for that to all transpire.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's on point. The ability to find a good guy gets easier also because there I get people probably 3 times a month that ask for a job. And I'm like, I know as soon as you ask me, I already know who you are. I can tell a lot just whether what you're wearing, what you're doing, where you're at, what time of day it is and where you're at. Like if I see you in town on the middle of the week, what are you doing here in town on the middle of the week? You should be somewhere that I'm not.
My favorite one is when the wife or the girlfriend reaches out and says, my husband's looking for a job." It's like, "Really? Doesn't seem like it."
Yeah. Is he out working where you're here job hunting for him? Yeah, I've also had those too, but yeah, I
That's
think
a red
you
flag.
just get to know those are things you're like, "Nope, I can just tell just visiting with you here at the grocery store that you're not the guy."
Yeah.
So, and the seriousness that they carry themselves with, and like I said, the way they dress. If you're not dressed like you are going to a job interview, like I'm not saying I dress like I'm going to a job interview every day, I guess, but I'm dressed like I wanna look professional every day. I
Yes,
wanna
and the crew at Wineglass does a great job at that. There's kind of a dress code at Wineglass, not imposed by management at all, but everyone wears long sleeve shirts every day of the year, even when it's 100 degrees. Nice pair of jeans. They look good, and that makes a difference. It makes a difference in how you act and how you behave. I think that dressing is an important part of screening folks.
Yeah, when you go to see these Australian guys, they all have the company shirt with the company
Mhm.
logo on
Yes.
every like, that is common across Australia and New Zealand that you see every employee wearing a company shirt every day.
Yeah, in fact, I had an Australian out at the ranch yesterday. She was a Newfield scholar, visiting the United States, and she was headed to South America after that, and she had on the Newfield scholar hat and polo, and there's always a polo for the Australians. For Americans, we're if you're an American rancher, long sleeves every day of the year. No polos allowed unless you're on the golf course.
Yeah. Yep. What's a Newfield scholarship?
It is a was an Australian program where, they pay a good chunk of you to travel to agriculture operations for for several weeks, and, they pay a good chunk of it, and then you have to write up a report, when you get back, but you get to choose your subject, and then you identify agriculture operations to visit as a part of the journey. And she's from the Northern Territories. Trudy was her name. The Northern Territories of Australia, where they were on Bos Indicus cattle. Uh, it was fascinating. They don't have a sale barn within like 1,000 miles or something, and so it's very limited. They typically ship live animals into Indonesia, and she was talking about the political ramifications of that. But yeah, very, very fascinating.
That's super interesting. I'm gonna throw this out in a as a book I read years ago called Grass Beyond the Mountains, and it's about a couple of guys who were Wyoming cowboys that started a ranch north of where it was mapped in British Columbia, and they started like a 3 or 4 million acre cattle ranch up there on crown land, government land, and they were 700 miles on the rail to I'm trying to remember the name of the city over on the western side there in British Columbia.
Victoria.
Yeah, maybe Victoria, and they would put all load their cattle. I built a set of corrals at the rail yard, loaded those calves, and they rode 700 miles on
Wow.
the rail all the way over there to get their calves sold, and you're like, you would have thought about that before you started this massive ranch in the middle of nowhere, but the things people do.
Yeah, she was kind of amazed at where we sit, so close to sale barns, so close to feed. She just reminded me that ranching in Western Nebraska, there are a lot of advantages. It's expensive, property tax, the rents, and all that. But man, you got feed options, you got marketing options when you want to buy cattle. It's like I can get on the horn and get 5 potloads of calves bought today, probably if I needed to. And she just in the Northern Territories, it's just the polar opposite. Feed, no, not a chance. Moving cattle in and out, not really. It reminded me of when we visited the ranches in Hawaii with WRM 3 or 4 years ago, just the limited feed and marketing options.
Mhm. That's really interesting that not everywhere has the options. I saw an ad yesterday on Facebook, and it was like bred/breeding heifers. I wasn't totally clear, but they were like, "Bulls were in them. We gotta get them out. This is drought. Load as many take them all tomorrow if you want them." And it was $3,300 for a heifer, for bred heifer,
Exposed
and
to
they want them out.
Yeah.
So, it's, like you said, we can go load, and I live kind of in the middle of I live in a bit of an island in terms of where my ranch sits compared to sale barns and things like that, but with our trucking options here, we can like you said, I could have 5 potloads of anything I wanted here probably tomorrow morning if I
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
So, it's very, very interesting how things here are different than Australia. My friend, Lost Cowboy Dusty Vaquero, JP Zelke, was here doing some video for the UW Ranch Camp last week. And his stories and his book he wrote, The Lost Cowboy, about going to Northern Australia and the wildness. I asked him, I said, "Is it really? I mean, how is it?" He's like, "I will tell you, it is the most fun I've ever had, but it
Yeah,
is the most dangerous thing I've ever done."
I read that book, on your recommendation a year ago, and I was telling Trudy about it and how they use the bikes to go around everything, and how in the book he wrote, "It's just a matter of time before you get hurt," and Trudy was like, "Yeah, on a typical ranch in Northern Australia, they got a pile of broke down bikes that someone ran into something."
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and McCoy's like, me and McCoy and Ren were talking about that yesterday morning on the way up to breakfast, and McCoy's like, "I think I'd rather be the guy in the Jeep with the little arm that goes down over their head than be the motorcycle guy," and, knowing Ren, he's like, "No, I'm gonna be a motorcycle guy, jump off, tail." So
Yeah, tell more about the Jeep and how they do that.
yeah, so they got this, kind of Mad Max setup type of Jeep with a hydraulic arm on the front. Usually they're on the front right side from the videos I've seen. So on the um, and you're driving and you get up next to a bull that you've kind of worn down and from running, and you get up next to it and you slide that arm over this hydraulic arm over the bull's neck, and then you can stop, slow up the Jeep that you're driving, and then you have control of this thing, and then they'll ultimately get it tied up to a tree and then show up with a stock truck and load this thing. But they're gathering it with this hydraulic arm, which is, I can't even quite imagine. But in the story or in the book that JB Zelke's talking about, is that they're taking this hydraulic, or they'll be driving these Jeeps, and then they'll run into these like massive ant hills and it'll flip the Jeep.
Mhm.
So it's not like the Jeep is the safest way to get around either.
No, it's pretty Western as I understand it.
Yeah. I wish I would have gone and done something like that. I said, Ren, what do you think? He's like, that's what I'm planning on doing. Like Rent's already in tune, and we've had a lot of Australians come through our ranch over the last 10, 15 years, and I think Ren will absolutely, go hook up with some of those people that have been here and probably go work on some ranches in Australia when he gets out.
Gosh, are remote in those northern on those northern ranches.
Yeah, I think that's Ren's jam. He's like, "Yeah, I might even try and become a helicopter pilot while I'm up there."
See, that's too far from a golf course for me.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I I do. I have been enjoying golf. My older son has gotten really into golf, so we try and take Sundays and go play golf, and it's gotten really fun.
Yeah, you've done really good at that. That's a nice family tradition that you guys have.
Yeah, it's, we talked about last time, getting more time with your family and starting to slow down a little bit in life and realize, you having these great managers gives us the ability to go do those things on a Sunday when you're trying to give everybody the day off, and I went golfing, and then I came home and I got on my four-wheeler and made a pretty good zip around the ranch to make sure that everything was still the way I wanted it to be. So, I ended up being out a little later than I normally would be on a Sunday, but I also got to spend several hours with my family, which
On the
is
golf
more
course.
important. And I'd rather put in a little later afternoon on a Sunday and get to go hang out with my family and joke around with my kids and stuff. So it's really it's been an awesome thing for our family to get into, and my wife, Megan, who gets very frustrated by the game of golf, has actually gotten pretty good at it too, so that's been fun.
That's fun just to get outside with the
Yeah.
fam. Let's
Yeah.
talk about, Tom Farm's post. We're ready to pivot.
Yeah, I think, I hadn't really got into this, and this morning I was reading up on it so I could be ready to talk about it, and that's what it feels like.
Yeah, so let me just kinda read the tweet, that kicked it off, but the rules of agriculture are changing. For generations, the path to farming or ranching often meant inheriting land, equipment, and a place in the operation. Today, the next generation faces a much different reality. High land values, rising costs, and tight margins mean success requires more than hard work. It takes strategy, innovation, strong relationships, and willingness to adapt. As a multi-generational family farm, we know that preserving a legacy isn't about passing down acres. It's about creating opportunities for the next generation to lead, grow, and succeed. So the rules are really changing here for farm and ranch families. It's just not the same where you inherit the land, the inherit the cattle, and you're good. The rules are changing on us, and you need to be able to pivot, strategize, and manage your way through the ups and downs of ag.
Yeah, I talked to an older guy here several years ago, and he said, "Man, when I got my place, I just knew if I worked harder and put in more hours that I'd be okay." He said, he told me this was 10 years ago. He said, "You will not be able to do that."
Yeah,
That
so there was you got ahead in farming and ranching, and my prior generations did this. labor was the scarcity, and you figured out how to leverage labor to grow your farm. And that was a winning strategy for a century at least. And we are post that with the equipment and scale that we run today. Labor is no longer the limiting force. So those boomers, they knew that, man, if they outworked their neighbors, they would succeed. And it was a winning strategy for many decades.
Yeah, think you're totally on. What I saw in the article was that now the average home buyer is 40, used to be 28. 1991, 28 years old, you could buy your first home. At 40 is when you do it now. Um, let's talk about how parents are owning all these assets, or our parents' generation own all the assets. And that's, you know, part of the problem is obviously they're not letting them go because they still need to make a living. Because especially if you're ranching, just because you own these assets doesn't mean that you can retire. And getting those assets passed on is doable, but it's takes a lot of forethought.
Yeah, and they need cash flow to retire, and they're living longer too, and they are victims of inflation as much as anyone else. So it's a formidable challenge to get them, the money that they need to retire, aside from the assets, because, land is a wonderful appreciating asset that does not provide the same cash flow as many other asset classes.
Land rich, cash poor.
Yeah, exactly. My mom always joked that on her tombstone, it's gonna say she had a lot of equity. She doesn't know what it is, but she had a lot of it.
Yeah, if you can get on a four-wheeler and go see it all every day.
Yeah, you can take inventory of it, but cash doesn't spit out of the thing just automatically. Goes
Yeah.
into it really easy, but, getting it out of it is a little trickier.
Well, and then you don't have young people that wanna come back to their family's place, and so then you have that older generation trying to figure out who their tenants are gonna be, and when they're trying to figure out who that tenant is, it becomes more like, who can make the most money because I'm gonna maybe the deal set up, I get a percentage of what's made on the place, not, you pay me 5,000 a year and that's the deal. It's I want a percentage of what crop has come off of my operation, and you're gonna choose the best farm manager for that, or ranch manager for that.
Yeah, and that's a good way to do it because there are the ups and downs in commodity production. You don't typically make money 10 years out of 10 in cropping or cattle, in my experience. So having to pay full market rent when you have a loss year is very difficult to do. And so if you have a share basis like that, when times are really good, you're reaping more, and when times are leaner, you're reaping less along with the operator.
Right. Well, 46% 2025 was farm bankruptcies, 70% 2026.
Really,
Yeah,
70%. So it's up quite a bit.
it's up uh, almost over 20%.
Wow.
Yeah, almost 30%.
And, the grains have just been tanking here recently. I don't know why. I famously on this podcast said many weeks ago, think they're going up, and they have done nothing but crumble since I've said that.
Yeah, that's why most of us are still in business here, is because we're just chasing that one win.
Yeah, and I think cattle are working their way higher last couple sessions here.
Yeah, well, what I also saw was farm debt is at 624.7 billion, and we're talking they're gonna send 300 billion to Iran, right?
Mhm. To
So,
clean up the mess we made.
yeah, to go over there and, I don't wanna get into all the politics of that, because this you could there's other podcasts for that. But 300 billion, if you wiped away almost half of everyone's debt in every ranch or farm in America, that would, I think, be a better use of that money than it is to send it to Iran.
Oh, undisputably.
They're
But
making our food.
yeah, it's kind of funny. Domestic, we always debate domestic policy and the debt, and then the instant a war gets started, that just all goes out the window, and you just have to pretend that it doesn't matter again. It's all very frustrating, and so you look at, like, yeah, farm subsidies versus what a war costs, and it's really just a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, so, I don't know how far down that road we wanna go, but the future of ag, it said in this article or that, on Tom Farm's post, future ag leaders will be finance, environmental science, tech, supply chain management guys and ladies. So it is not gonna be kid that grew up on the farm and he loves to farm, or kid that grew up on the ranch and, loves to go rope calves. That's not gonna be your guys running these businesses anymore. It's gonna be, guys, maybe you're a great calf roper and you like to rope at branding, but your education is finance or something like that.
Yep, I would agree with that. You wanna pivot and talk about ATVs versus horses?
Yeah, I think that'd be good. We're very much a horse operation, and our country is very rough. You can't check fence in a Toyota Camry here. Uh, my guys actually we do some fencing horseback, but if you're doing anything very serious, you've got a pack horse behind you carrying all your materials. So it's, or you have a roll of wire, and we have ways that we figured out how to stretch fence without having to pack a whole bunch of stuff with us. So you can do some basic things on just your horse and carry some wire with you and your tool, your fencing tool. But most of our guys go up and they'll take a side by side, or they take their fencing truck up there somewhere, and then they'll just walk the fence, and they'll have everything on them. They're, wire and all sorts of stuff on them, and they're just walking fences. But ours is, like I said, mostly lay down, so we're standing it up. And so we use ATVs and horses, and our H2A guys are mostly on ATVs, and then our guys that are moving cattle and that stuff are mostly on horseback.
How many horses do you own or run?
When
How much
we
that mean?
had when we had 7,000 sheep and our full cattle production that we do, we had 65 head of horses at least all the time on the ranch. I have some neighbors that run a lot more sheep than we had, at maybe double, and they also have a cow portion of their operation, and their guys feed corn in the winter with teams of horses and a wagon, so you don't have one guy going around feeding corn to all the bunches of sheep, and they have, including their draft horses, 120 head of horses.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what does it cost to run a horse for 1 year?
Um, so we have a horse rental business that we do in the fall. So our horses that have been used all summer, and sheep camp horses, and not our really good fancy horses, but these are mostly like wild horses that we adopted, and they're pretty tough and things like that. They're really gentle by the end of the summer. Times hunting season comes around, and my sister started a horse rental business to hunters, and we figure it's about 375 per horse to run a horse for the year, and that horse rental business more than pays for all of the horse costs. So we basically,
$375?
dollars per horse, because
I'm sure there's more than that.
in the summer, they're out on grass. We don't cake them every day. We don't give them anything. The horses we use will give some grain, but, our winter cost is more. This year, it's gonna be significantly more because the cost of hay is significantly more.
Sure. Yeah,
But normally, in a normal hay cost year, 375 is what it costs us to run a horse for the year.
interesting.
A horse, and we have 45 of them now.
Sure. How many ATVs do you have?
We have through 4 side by sides and 4 sit on top four-wheelers.
Sure. So we have 0 horses, and everyone has a four-wheeler, and then I have a side-by-side. And let me tell you a story about the first four-wheeler at Wineglass Ranch, because obviously we were horseback until a point. So I grew up horseback. I get it. And what you run into in Nebraska is the guys that have horses, they tend to they don't use them daily. Hardly any operations use them daily. They're kind of ceremonial, and you hop on them a couple times a month. They can kind of get sour, and you get into trouble, and people get hurt. I have a lot of friends who have gotten hurt on horses, and we were talking about that with Cassidy. I was like, the guys that ride daily don't really have the accidents. It's the guys in Nebraska that jump on a horse once or twice a month, and that is when it gets dangerous. So, but anyway, let me tell you the story about the first four wheeler wine glass. It was the year 2000, and everyone had horses back then. We would move with horses, and we'd saddle up uh, a few times a week, not every day, but more than at least a couple times a week. And the year was 2000. My dad was watching a neighboring ranch, and they were running three wheelers, and he was keen on it, and just watching from across the fence line. And they came up with a safer four wheeler. Honda did at the time, and he bought one. And we used to meet daily at the time, and he showed up and he said, "I just got you guys a Honda. I'm going to keep it in the shop, and you guys can use it as necessary." And the ranch hands at that time are like, "I don't know why you bought that ATV. No one is going to use it. It's going to sit in that shop, and it's just going to collect dust. We really don't need it. It's not nothing. Nothing that we're interested in." Fast forward a year later, and my dad, he was working at Imperial Beef at the time, the feed yard, so he wasn't on the ranch full time then. Less than a year later, he showed up. He's like, "Just guys, it seems like we're falling behind on our work here. Things just aren't happening like they used to happen. Who can explain to me like what's happening here?" And the ranch hands all go to speak at once. They're like, "Well, John had the four wheeler yesterday, so I couldn't get around that fence or move this group. I had to wait till he was done with it, and lo and behold, everyone was fighting over this one four wheeler. So we went from 1 year, no one wants a stinking four wheeler, and a year later, every ranch hand on the place had to have their own four wheelers so they could get their work done."
Yeah, that feels pretty accurate. I think we used to be that way also. A lot more horses. My dad said when he came here in the 70s, for first time he came to the ranch was in 1976, and then he worked for the ranch, and my grandpa ran things with an iron fist, and he irrigated everything up Battle Creek, which is about 5 miles of irrigated meadow, on horseback every day. And he said it took all day. You went, you moved your tarp, and you rode the next one, you move your tarp, and you just on and on and on. And now I have a guy, actually this morning, he is moving some tarp on his four-wheeler, and he'll have, a half dozen dams to move. And then, Chandler asked me this morning, he said, "Hey, can he help me ride today? We've got still a lot of cattle we gotta clean up to get to the forest." And I said, "Yeah, go ahead." And so that guy is probably gonna cost Chandler a half hour this morning because 'cause he's gotta go move his tarps, but he's gonna then be back, hop on a horse, and can go help those guys. So, um, it's just crazy how much faster and more efficient it makes your operation. And but there is always at least one broke down four-wheeler. It's just like never it's awful.
Do you guys run Hondas? I can't remember.
We do have Hondas, and then I actually, got one Can-Am, but I try to keep it in the shop, and, like, it's a nicer one that I'm hoping will last me a long time, but with Ren around that and not having a driver's license, Ren has taken full advantage of having it, and he's already put 1,000 miles on it.
Wow.
So
We have pretty good luck with our four wheelers. The thing that goes out on ours are the boots. We can't keep the guards on corn stalks in particular. But outside of boots, we really don't have many problems. We do trade them pretty frequently, and then we've got the Can-Am side by side, but repairs on those are fairly minimal.
so, let's go into that. What's your trade-in? Give us the numbers. I shouldn't hear them, but give us the numbers of what the horses versus four-wheelers are.
So I've got my spreadsheet here. I run vehicle budgets. I think, and these have doubled. The cost for a mile in a pickup and a cost per mile on a four wheeler have doubled in the last 6 or 7 years, just because of inflation and everything. So you have to buy. They're about 10 grand to buy. Um, I estimate it costs us about a buck 90 a mile to run an ATV, and that's everything baked in. I'm not missing even a tax in there. For the side by side, it's over $3 a mile to run. Because I mean, we have the nice side by side with the heating and cooling indoors, and it's about a $30,000 rig. But yeah, that's the.
And what's your thought on the horse versus those 2 things?
I think for us to run a horse, per mile, it'd be more expensive than the side by side. I think it'd be north of $3 a mile and that's just one horse. Obviously, like you guys, everyone would need at least two.
Everybody on my place we have enough, um, I mean, because we keep enough for interns, and then horses, same as four-wheelers, somebody's always hurt. You always have a vet bill no matter what, and, um, but everybody has 2 to 3 horses on my
Yeah.
operation.
Okay.
So, um, but we'll put a normal day for us is a 15 to 20 mile ride day for every cowboy. So, say you send out yesterday, 8 people went out to move all of our yearlings, and they gathered 4 pastures. Like I said, somebody opened a gate, cattle were out. They gathered 4 pastures yesterday with 8 cowboys and, had I think 700 yearlings they were trying to get together, and they didn't even get them all. So,
Wow.
and everybody rode at least 15 miles yesterday or more.
And you can just see how the callers are just going to just change your world.
Yeah, and when you look at that scenario, so I'll tell you a quick story. I talked to Jack from Halter the other day, and I had a few that had gotten out, their collars were paused or something happened, and anyway, they got out of the group, and they were a tough ride away, a tough gather away from the rest of the herd, and Jack was like, "Oh, I'm sitting in the airport, I'll get those gathered up for you while I'm sitting here and get them kinda kicked back over to the group." And sure as hell, like, what would have taken me all day through nasty brush, chasing yearlings. And this isn't like, I mean, some of this is crawl through brush. It is not like you can just ride through it and keep up or even see the yearlings the whole time. You're hoping they come out the other end and didn't peel off somewhere on you. And that by that afternoon, he had them gathered up and they were all the way down to the river, just across the river from the rest of the herd. And he just bumped them over there, making catch fences around them and just pushing them over there. So it is gonna be a real game changer over time, and like we've talked before, what we're now just figuring out, our kids are gonna be like, "Yeah, that's so easy." Like, why would we waste a guy or a day on doing that? Like, let's go do other things and we'll build some catch fences, and then we'll wait a couple hours, and then we'll build another one and keep bumping them closer, and then in the morning, we can run over there and just kick them in.
I mean, that's just going to be a total game changer for you
Yeah.
guys.
So with all the yearlings we have on in my group that we're breeding, um Jack and I ran the numbers because he's like, "Oh, do you want callers for, all of those?" I was like, "Boy, Jack, I've already got like 1,700 callers on or something between yearlings and cows and other things, and I've got movement tags in my yearlings, which is more of just a GPS locator, so it can at least find them." And, um, we did the math, and it would take 15 more heifers getting bred to pay for the collars. So, not bad, but can we get 15 more bred? I don't know that answer, and there's a lot of money outlay to get
Yeah.
there. So, we've we've got some figuring to do for sure, and once we get the satellite collars on, I think it'll really change things because, right now, we're just, the towers my biggest problem is cell phone service. So, I went to another place, I wanna put up a 3rd tower for connectivity and have some more area to graze, and I had, uh SOS on my phone in both places that I was hoping to put a tower up. So would have had great view of the area and would have been able to grab a bunch more acres, but I just no service. So that's kind of my holdup on it. I wrote down a couple notes while you were talking about the numbers. So our spring horses are kind of like what you're talking about with your neighbors that ride once or twice a month and have a horse wreck. In the spring, we don't use horses. Our sheep herders do. The rest of the operation does not use horses from middle to end of November till April. So those horses are just kind of sitting around getting what we call fresh. And so in the spring, there's definitely some, it's a little more than just hopping on your horse and going and doing your job. You kind of got to get the juice out of them. Chandler told me a story this morning. He just got some meta glasses.
Yeah.
His horse was bucking on him yesterday,
Yeah.
and his horse goes to bucking, and he says, "Meta record." Like, while his horse is bucking, he's trying to get his meta glasses to record this whole scenario, and he said, "I got home and I realized, like, you have to press and hold the button to make a video record."
Oh,
So
that's not gonna work.
he couldn't get any of it to record while his horse was bucking, but it was pretty funny that Chandler, while his horse is bucking out on him and he's riding it out, he's thinking, "How do I record this?"
Yeah. That'd be good footage.
Yeah, it'd be hilarious, but you'd have to really be somebody that could keep that button held down while you're riding
Yeah.
one out. So, um, pretty pretty interesting the differences that you do, and I really love those, costs that you put together. I don't I'm not sure how I could run I'll have to play with it, how I could run a horse number to figure out what our total cost is versus what that riding mile cost, because we do put a lot of miles on our horses, so that should
How many do you think you put
fairly
on a year on a horse?
Pardon?
How many miles you put on a horse a year?
Well, let's take the minimum of 15 miles, and we ride them 6 months of the year, so, 15 miles times 180 days, 2,700 miles a horse.
Well, you don't ride them every
Well,
day.
yeah, divide that by 3, say you got 3 horses, so 900 miles per horse.
Gotcha, yeah. Yeah, on our ATVs, those guys my managers will put on 3 to 4,000.
Right. Yeah, when you told me I was out there one time, you said, "I know if a guy's doing his job, if he hasn't put 4,000 miles on his four-wheeler, then he's not doing his job."
Yeah, proficiently. Cattle care is different. You can't evaluate pasture, you can't evaluate crops, you can't evaluate cattle through a windshield. You have to put your boots on the ground.
Yeah, and I can generally tell by I can almost tell if a guy's done enough that day on his horse or what they did that day based on how that horse walks home. If that horse if
Well,
that horse comes home and it's got, like, a lope to it,
definite step.
it's ready to come back, then you didn't do enough.
Yeah.
You didn't check over the hill. You didn't ride to the top of that hill to make sure you had them all.
Yep.
So
And to kinda conclude the ATVs versus horses, you'll notice that in the Marlboro Man ads, they very seldom have them sitting on a Honda Rancher. It's always a four-wheeler,
the
or it's
horse
always a horse.
the horse is sexy.
It's sexy. I get it. Like, and I understand that. We lost there's some soul that you lose as a ranch. Like, ATVs are a heck of a efficient tool, but you definitely lose a little bit of soul, at the cost of efficiency, so I
You
get it.
you can't go to the Grizzly Rose in Denver and go to the concert and telling some girl about the ATV you drive at work moving cows. You've
No.
gotta be wearing the boots, and you've
Mhm.
gotta have the horse stories and all those things, or you're not picking up the girls to Grizzly Rose.
That's true, or that's one thing where the death of soul for efficiency at wine glass.
Oh, that is really good. Well, let's kind of, talk a little bit about what we wanna hit on episode 12. Um, Message from, TRD Aaron about
Yeah, Trader
selling
Aaron on Twitter, he reached out talking about he listened to the one where we talked about selling yearlings in the barn versus the video. He really had the same experience, and he wants us to hit a little bit more on, the fill in yearlings and how you manage that, and I think that'd be a great one for episode 12. And then the other thing I wanted to hit on, I was talking with Trudy yesterday, I wanna hit on, what the world's gonna look like, what's beef production's gonna look like when we have a device that measures nutritional content in individual pieces of meat and produce. Because I think we're going to move away from pounds of production into selling beef by the nutrition content. I think that we are less than 5 years away for selling beef for well over $100 a pound once we have that tool, and I think we can, dive into that.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I'd love to talk about that. The other thing I think we should hit on, and it's changing every day, and, I don't think this episode's one to get into it because we talked a little bit about it on the last one, but, where we'll be, next week with, New World Screwworm.
Yeah, and next week I'll be at the ladder, so it will be in person.
That's right. That's right. We'll have you guys some sort of really fancy background. Maybe if we're lucky, we can be outside if it's not windy.
Beautiful. I can't wait. Well,
Cool.
it's a pleasure.
Yeah. We'll talk to you next time, Logan.
All right, keep running on grass.
You too.